Alright, let's look at Averbakh-Karpov game from 1970. Let's jump into the beginning of the rook endgame. The queens were just traded off. Black goes to the b file and white attacks the a pawn. Well, maybe intending to double the rooks there, or maybe double the rooks on the e pawn. Either way. Well, he also freezed his passed pawn. And Karpov decides that he can chop e pawn for the c pawn. So if white would take here, black is probably fine here, no worries. He can move the king here and he's fine. I think if white tries something on the back rank, black can probably double there, and even intending to push the a pawn and put the rook behind it and get counterplay running that one. Not that white is threatening much here anyway, so that's all winning chances here. Instead, Averbakh pushed the pawn, thinking that he gets the next extra pawn, because if black does something like this, he gets in a lot of trouble by letting the rooks invade on the 7th file. This would actually be a complete disaster here. Black's completely lost with the rooks on the 7th rank here. So instead, in the game, he decides that he'll just get the c pawn. White, of course, could defend it, but he defends it in a different way. But I assume that if we go here, then black brings the king here, and then this rook needs to go and with chop chop and then stuff. Probably come back here to defend the 7th rank. But yeah, this seems like a obvious counterplay against this one. In a game, Averbakh decides we go here instead. And again, this is completely untakeable because this is just lights out, completely lost. The rooks on the 7th are way too strong. So you take, well, black has to stop the pawn and white ends up with the extra pawn. Black does get the pawn back though. But white's counterplay here is that he gets to tries to get it into this hole. Here black could try to stop this, but then the 6th rank here comes actually the problems for black. Because white can try to make the hole here, and if you take now, then white takes and this becomes quite a vulnerable pawn. Like if you take now there. White can play e4 and eventually, well, black runs out of moves. And here drops the pawn. Well, white also can just choose to go for these pawns instead, but both plans win. So this would not be good. And if black tries something like g6 to hold on to the pawn duo here, white can actually take, and then suddenly this becomes a problem. Aiming to go there. Oh, sorry, first we go attack the pawns. Then we get there with tempo, not instantly there. And now if black takes, a rook here is picking up a pawn. And if you go back, let's say king f7, aiming that we can come here and defend, then this king is now far away from here and white has time to make holes here and make weaknesses again. This is not good at all for black, for instance. Many ways to go about it. So it's better to not move pawns at all. Even though after the game continuation, white does get uncomfortably to split the pawns here. Karpov played king d6, denying this entry here, and Averbakh played here. And now Karpov, if he goes g6, trying to hold his pawns intact, white can just take, and then this king is too far away. White takes the pawn and the king is fine, he can escape eventually from here. White has a lot of moves to break any oppositions here. Not that white and black has any to begin with. So Black actually has to take this pawn here. Gets the weakness here. Well, Karpov doesn't push. That might be fine too. He plays king d7 here, intending that he gets here an opposition. Of course, white has a lot of moves to break it here though. And he does, but black just says, nah, I'll just wait here. There's no breakthrough here. And he does wait. The white pushes their pawns, and then Averbakh comes with a plan that brings the king to g5 and pushes the h5 pawn all the way to h6. Makes some hole here, and then he tries to invade through the f6. Karpov comes here, and then again he doesn't move the pawns, he just moves with the king. And then here, well, taking here is no good at all, because this is hopeless. White plays f4 here, and then, well, you have to only move here for black not to lose a pawn, and white just wins with this pawn push, 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 and this guy picks this up. And which way do we take this? With a pawn, of course, so we get this opposition here and breakthrough. King takes, of course, is a completely hopeless draw. Black gets the opposition, and now we get no breakthroughs at all. And the king is still on the white side of the board, so this is good enough. So here, black has to push the pawn. And now there is a weakness here. And white goes for it. First, we swing the king around here. Black comes defend the entry here. White has g5. And then Karpov goes back. Opposition, but white has a move in hand. So what's the point? Well, here funnily both sides are fine. In a game, Karpov went king f7, dropping the e-pawn. But even this is fine, letting the white actually get through here. King d6. And then you just follow the king. And now this pawn kind of traps the white king on the flank. And there's no tempo gains here. This just loses the pawn. Even though it's even fine here, since white can stalemate themselves. For instance, stalemate, but yeah. The white king is not escaping any further from here. That would be also a draw. But also the way Karpov played, he knew that this endgame is holdable. He loses the e-pawn, but he doesn't care. King f8. And here. Again, taking the opposition here would be a blunder. White plays a breakthrough here, f5. King f6 is no good, then black gets back here and holds. Now this is no longer any kind of a problem. King goes, well, of course taking here would be catastrophe, letting the pawn through, but black king can go here and then white has to take. Pushing here actually loses when black pawn runs through. But here white can actually break through faster, f5. And now this is no longer good enough because white takes, and then he wins the pawn here and has two connected passed pawns, which is easily winning. And of course this is hopeless too. And taking here is no good, since white just keeps on breaking through, and now pawns keep the king away. Somebody's gonna promote, and by somebody I mean h7. But luckily for Karpov, he knows he can just go here, and now this would be a stalemate, no good, and the pawn breaks are no longer anyway scary. We just take. You could come here, and here you can lose the pawn, but blank pawn is no threat at all. We just keep the king in the corner and hold it easily. So this position is completely a hopeless draw. Well, not very exciting, but just showcases a lot of endgame knowledge. Until next time, ciao.